Hello, everyone, and welcome to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services at Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm your host, Len Szynski from the Pinellas County Communications Department. For the Love of Animals is a celebration of our connection and commitment to all things animal-related in the Tampa Bay area. And during the next hour, we'll be sharing with you information about the animals we love and the services and programs provided by Pinellas County Animal Services. First up, 3 important services performed at Animal Services are adoptions, rescues, and fostering. The acronym is ARF. And here to spend some time with us this morning and explain a little bit about the ARF program is ARF Coordinator for Pinellas County Animal Services, Tyson Youts.
Hello, Len.
Hello, Tyson. Once again, a regular on the program. Always good to have you sitting over there. Always good to see you on the show.
It's always enjoyable doing everything we can to get these animals into their right places.
Well, how are adoptions going at Pinellas County Animal Services these days?
Well, adoptions for the month of July are actually up 30% over
great.
July of last year. We've done some more things with digital media, radio,
Yes.
this is new, and others. Lots of videos and photographs. For the year, adoptions are up almost 8%. And last year, adoptions were nothing to sneeze at. There were a lot of adoptions last year also. So we're really happy that we're giving records to our records.
Well, no, and it's great, and there's so much effort placed on adoptions at Animal Services and going out and partnering with some of the animal service agencies in Pinellas County to get them to show some of the animals, some of the pet stores, and it's just really great to see that all this hard work is paying off.
It's so much easier to work with everyone to find homes for the animals than everybody compete against each other.
I know this is a busy time of year. Is this kind of the busiest time of year for y'all?
It's almost the busiest time of year for animals coming into the shelter. It is not the busiest time of year for adoptions.
Oh, okay.
The reasoning for that is so many people are on vacation, they don't want to take on a lifelong task of bringing in a new animal. So a lot of animals come in at the beginning of summer, and the adoptions are not so great. We're fortunate that we've done a lot of things. Great volunteers have really helped with a lot of the digital things, and people are listening to radio and looking at the newspaper and everything to help increase adoptions. But historically, adoptions are very poor in the summertime.
So the need is there. We've got to get the volume up a little bit.
Yes, and usually we'll tell people that a little dog, everybody wants a little dog. They get adopted within a half an hour of coming up into adoptions. In the summertime, that half an hour turns into usually 48 hours before they get adopted.
Well, adoptions, rescues, I think people are familiar with those terms. Fosters, maybe not so much, but you're going to tell me that there is a need for foster pet parents at Pinellas County Animal Services. What is a foster pet parent program?
Well, fostering is an area that we have only recently really been pushing and developing. In the past, it was, we've got a litter of kittens that are just kind of too young. We can't put them up for adoption yet. So we ask, hey, employee A, will you take this litter? Employee B, will you take this litter? Raise them up. And they're already working with so many animals. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and overloaded. So we began asking our volunteers, will you help us out with taking some of these fosters? And fostering essentially is animals that need to be out of the shelter and raised or worked with so it will make them adoptable or more adoptable.
And now the program has indeed worked out pretty well. When these animals spend time away from the shelter for whatever reason, they may be too young, they may have behavioral problems, they may just need to get away from the masses, the maddening crowd, and they get back, they're more adoptable and they get adopted.
They are. And in the case of kittens come in waves. The kittens, apparently not everyone's spaying or neutering their animals, but when they don't, then we get lots of kittens, and that is seasonal. In late spring, they begin flooding in. We'll go from having no kittens at all in January to 70 to 100 kittens, in a day. This time of year.
So you need some foster pet parents for kittens right now.
To raise them up so that they get a little bigger, because we can't adopt them out until they weigh 2 pounds. And we're even asking citizens that find a litter of kittens, if we give you some help, can you take them back home and raise them up a little more and be a temporary foster to get them adoptable for us?
So the cry has gone forth for foster pet parents for kittens and some of these other animals. If somebody were interested now, I understand that you have a whole education program. You can kind of teach somebody how to be a good foster pet parent. How does that all work?
We do. At least once a month, and many occasions, twice a month, we have a class. Now, we'll do a volunteer orientation because if you want to be one of our fosters, you need to be qualified to be one of our volunteers as well so that you learn all of the great things about volunteering with Pinellas County. And we put the classes back to back. So you can take your volunteer orientation, hit the restroom, get a soda, get a drink, then take the foster class so that you can learn how to raise them up.
I've got some dates here. They emailed me some dates coming up, some foster parent classes, and let me read this into the record, if I may. On Wednesday, August 14th, it says here, foster training is from 5 to 6 o'clock that day, and the volunteer orientation class takes place after that, from 6 to 7:30. That's Wednesday, August 14th. Saturday, September 14th, we have foster training and volunteer orientation at 9 o'clock in the morning. Wednesday, September 25th, foster training and volunteer orientation at 2:30 in the afternoon until 5 o'clock. So if that is convenient for somebody's calendar and if they're interested in participating in these classes, what do they do right now today?
Write it down, give us a call. And you can also go online onto almost every department has a link back to volunteer services. But you can go onto the Animal Services webpage and sign up to be a volunteer. From there, then you get detailed information on what you need to do.
What are the classes like? What do you learn in these classes?
Well, and there's the two different classes, which I said, which are back
the
to
volunteer
back.
and the foster.
The orientation teaches you volunteering in Pinellas County and how all the different departments are great and lots of other benefits that volunteers get. And there are a lot of great things that volunteers can take advantage of.
Absolutely.
But in addition to that, then you learn about the shelter, the number of animals that come in each year, the layout of the shelter. From what just the general public sees walking in, you have a lobby, you have an adoption area. That's interesting. That's it. There are 4 more very large buildings for housing animals and examination rooms and the areas where the officers are. So you get to take that tour as you become a volunteer. The second class, or the other class for fostering, teaches you some of the things and resources to raise especially kittens, because that's where the foster need is the greatest, although adult dogs, we have some need there too. But with the kittens, how do you recognize if there's a problem? Is it not feeling well? Is it normal kitten behavior?
All right.
So there's a lot of different things with kittens and any with fostering. So you have, what do I do in an emergency? How do I contact? There are people at the shelter that are that dedicated. They provide their contacts where you can reach them anytime.
What is the most important thing for a foster pet parent to remember or to learn or to keep in mind all the time?
I would say there are 2. And I would give them almost equal importance. One is, remember that what you're doing is the world to that animal that you're doing it for. And that animal is going to appreciate it and understand that it's, when you say goodbye, it's never easy to say goodbye. But remember that there's going to be another litter of kittens behind that one. The second one is, remember your limits. You may be able to foster a litter of kittens, maybe 2 litters of kittens. But 8 litters of kittens, that's a little difficult to do. And I don't know anybody with that capability. Just understand, you know, what limit do you have, what can you handle, and we'll help you with that to see what you can take on.
Do you get to choose your pet, or are their pets assigned to the volunteers?
The pets will be assigned, but you also do have some choices in there, and it's going to be based somewhat on your experience level with that. If you're going to take on a litter of kittens and they only need a week of good feeding and care, then that's great. You know, that's a fairly easy to do. If they're a lot younger, then you'll have to be home more often. You'll have to be spending a little more care, be a little more watchful. So there's different experience levels.
Well, how do you know when a pet is ready to go back to the shelter?
Well, with a kitten, it's pretty easy. Once it's 2 pounds, then it's big enough to be spayed or neutered. Right. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
With some of the other animals, for example, we have 3 dogs in foster care right now. They're adult dogs. They just hadn't been adopted yet, and they're really active. It's not good for a really active dog to be in a confined cage for weeks and weeks at a time. They just don't like it.
Yeah.
And some of the dogs, you'll actually see them sitting on their bed, and you can tell which dogs have been in the shelter for a long time because they just look at you. And they're like, what? What are you going to do? You going to take me home or not?
We hope that you get some volunteers out there to take some of these animals out of the situation and give them lots of love so that they can go back and find good homes.
We need everyone to sign up.
I'd like to thank my guest this part of the program, Tyson Youts, the ARF coordinator for Pinellas County Animal Services. And we would encourage our listeners, if you have any comments or questions on anything we've talked about on this program, send us an email, animals@pinellascounty.org. Well, how smart is your cat or dog? Coming up after the break, Dr. Caroline from Pinellas County Animal Services talks to us about how to get your pet to do what you want it to do. Stay with us. And we're back. Welcome back to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm Len Szynski with the Pinellas County Communications Department. How intelligent are dogs and cats? Well, some will amaze you at what they learn on their own, but then again, some pets seem pretty stubborn when it comes to getting on with the household program. How do you communicate with your pet? And how do you get a pet to do what you want it to do? With me today to share some advice on the subject is Dr. Caroline, Director of Veterinary Services for Pinellas County Animal Services. Dr. Caroline, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Lynn. How are you?
Good, good, and welcome to the program once again. Always a pleasure having you on the air here.
Same here.
Dogs and cats, how smart are dogs and cats? Are some breeds of dogs smarter than others just by nature?
Absolutely. And it all depends on exactly how you define intelligence. But typically with dogs, we're going to look at trainability, and so ability to learn a new command and repeat that. And I have a list here of our top 10 trainable and most intelligent dogs.
Oh, okay.
And those would be the Border Collie, the Poodle, the German Shepherd, the Golden Retriever, the Doberman Pinscher, the Shetland Sheepdog, the Labrador Retriever, the Papillon, the Rottweiler, and the Australian Cattle Dog. And so these are the 10. They did a study in 2011 where they looked at trainability in dogs, and those were the top 10 on the list.
So like a sheepdog or something, or a husky or something can obviously, they're used to pulling sleds. I suppose they can be trained to do that pretty easily. And a sheepdog would be trained to herd a group of animals pretty easily. But can these dogs that you mentioned, do they have superior intelligence in learning how to fetch and sit and roll over and that sort of thing?
They can. All the different breeds have different things that they're good at. And so Labrador Retriever is kind of bred and it's nature to go and fetch something. So it's going to be a lot easier to train them to fetch than it might be some of the other breeds that are, more for herding cattle or sheep or things like that.
And of course, a pointer makes an excellent hunting dog and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
Here's the age-old question for you, Dr. Caroline. Can you indeed teach an old dog new tricks?
You definitely can teach old dogs new tricks. And at the shelter, we get a lot of older dogs, that come into us. Maybe their owner couldn't keep them anymore or afford them, or perhaps they had, they got evicted and had to move. And we see these dogs all the time with the right techniques and the right TLC and time can easily learn new tricks. And a lot of times these older dogs are better at learning new tricks than a puppy because they've got a longer attention span and they have a base of knowledge to work with.
And maybe they've learned a few things in the past and they've forgotten it perhaps, but with a new owner and the right training, why that lesson comes back to the fore once again.
Certainly.
How does instinct affect behavior modification? And I ask that because, dogs have a certain instinct. They're pack animals. They have a place in the household hierarchy, just like they have a place out in the wild. They perhaps will respond to a pack leader better. They're looking for a leader of the pack. So how does that instinct affect the behavior that you want them to do?
Well, I think it affects it in a lot of different ways. I mean, that instinct drives them to do certain natural behaviors. And so when we work with our dogs, we have to understand that certain things, sometimes like digging and chewing, those can be normal dog behaviors. And so we have to be understand the reasons behind those if we're trying to tackle some of those behaviors. The other thing we need to look at is dogs are very, very in tune to body language because that's how they communicate in the wild or in a pack kind of setting. It's not as much verbal communication as far as barking and growling, although those certainly can have a part. But it's a lot of body language. And so understanding body language, being able to read your dog's body language, understanding your own body language, what you're portraying to your dog can really help make it easier to train and take advantage of those instincts instead of working against them.
Well, you say like some of the instincts, like the people would consider these bad habits, digging in the yard or burying a bone or barking or jumping on people. So it's going to be a little tougher to break those bad habits habits because they're ingrained.
It can, and we have to understand why they're doing those different things, to help to get it to the root of the problem and redirect that behavior into behaviors that we want.
Does a dog understand the word no? And I say that because you hear people use that word a lot, like they use it with kids. No, no, bad dog, look at this, look what you've done. Do they respond to that sort of tone of voice?
They do.
Oh, they do.
They typically can understand both words, so they tend to need to be pretty short words, but they can't understand verbal commands. But they also often respond more to tone of voice.
Okay.
And so using, especially if you want the dog to stop a certain behavior, as long as you're not dealing with a terribly fearful dog, that their behavior's out of fear, and so using a strong, commanding tone of voice would make it worse. Typically, they respond really well to that tone of voice. But they also respond to words if they've been trained to know the difference between different words.
But I would imagine a dog, just like any other animal on God's great earth, will respond more to something that would enhance desirable behavior rather than trying to say no to a negative behavior.
Yeah, Lynn, you're absolutely right. Positive reinforcement, so rewarding the behavior that you want, is our best way to train our dogs. And so what we want to do is we want to catch them doing whatever behavior it is that we want them to learn or that we want them to do, and we want to reward them. So probably the best reward is a really, really tasty food treat, making sure it's really small because we don't want to get them to gain too much weight, and giving that to them immediately. And it has to be an immediate reward for that behavior, and doing that on a consistent basis. Once they've learned a behavior, then we can do praise and pets and things like that. But especially when we're initially trying to teach something, using that positive reinforcement is good.
Does a clicker work?
A clicker can work great. And basically what you're doing with a clicker is you train the dog that when they hear the click, that they get a positive reward, so a treat. So they start to associate that sound with something positive. And then what's nice about the clicker is it's easy to immediately click when the dog does a good behavior, or a cat, because you can also use them for cats as well. And so it can be a really good way to immediately reinforce those behaviors you want and really help your dog to understand what it is you want them to do.
And I would imagine if the dog is at some distance from you, if you can't get the treat to him in enough time before he forgets what he did to deserve the treat, the clicker helps to reinforce it right at the moment.
It does.
What are some of the things that a dog should be taught to know? And I have a list here: leash adequate, stay, sit, heel. People teach their dogs these things. What on the list is important for a dog to know?
I think it's really important for dogs to, be able to walk on a leash, be able to wear a collar. So I think those are really important. Even if your dog primarily stays at home, if you have to leave the house or you have to go to the vet, it's really important they have that good behavior. Sitting and staying, I think, are very important too, especially the bigger the dog is. Those are very important behaviors. Learning to drop something, so if they pick something up in their mouth, learning to drop it, that can be really important in case they pick up something that's toxic, or they pick up your favorite Prada shoe or something like that. You want to make sure you can get that back. And overall, just getting them used to gentle handling, so getting them used to just, having their ears touched and their feet touched and, their tummies touched, all those things. That really helps them just when new people are around, and also when they have to go to the vet, so that they're used to that. So when they have that new and hopefully uncommon experience, they're going to deal with it a lot better.
Now, some of these behaviors that we teach animals, they're there to kind of make them be a good dog around other people. So they don't tear up the house, or they don't attack other people, or be rude to other people. Does something like shake, teaching a dog to shake, have any meaning? Yeah. And yet that's what people do. That's one of the first things they want to teach their dog, is how to shake.
They do. And I think it's great. I know for us, when we have a dog that comes into our shelter and we have a dog that knows how to sit and shake, that dog is more adoptable. And I think it also, it reinforces that bond with the dog. Learning how to do something, that training, it really stimulates them mentally and really helps them in that way too.
How long does training take? How patient do I have to be as a dog owner before my dog learns anything?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on the individual dog and their intelligence, and how much experience you have, because dog training isn't always intuitive. Some dogs will learn right away. You can teach them to sit within 5 minutes. Some dogs, it takes weeks of practice. So that'll just be dependent. Definitely, if you haven't done a lot of training or you're having issues, there's a lot of great resources out there. There's trainers out there that can come work with you one-on-one. There's lots of great books, lots of great websites. Just look for something that's based on positive reinforcement.
I think some of the best trained dogs in the world have got to be the service dogs, such as canines, police canines, or search and rescue dogs, even some of the other service dogs that people that are sight impaired use to get around. What sort of training do these animals go through to get them to be that meticulous?
Oh, it's a very, very intensive training process, and typically those dogs are bred specifically for those purposes. They go through a very vigorous screening process to make sure that they have what's needed to go and do those jobs, and then it's usually years and years of intensive professional training to be that well trained.
One last question real quick. Can cats be trained to do anything?
Yes, they can.
All right, can they?
They can. Yeah, so just like with dogs, we can train them with a clicker. We can train them to sit. Some people even have trained their cats, to go to the bathroom on the toilet. They can fetch. They can jump through hoops. A lot of people don't train their cats, but they are just as trainable as dogs if you know what to do.
Well, I have seen some of those YouTube videos, and they are quite amazing. Well, thank you, Dr. Caroline, very much. I'd like to thank my guest on this segment of For the Love of Animals, Dr. Caroline Thomas, Director of Veterinary Services for Pinellas County Animal Services. Remember, if you have a question for Dr. Caroline, simply email it to us at animals@pinellascounty.org, and we'll give you an answer on a future edition of For the Love of Animals. Well, coming up after the break, we'll find out more information about the pets we love and some of the important programs provided by Pinellas County Animal Services. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to For the Love of Animals. I'm Len Szynski with the Pinellas County Communications Department. People spend a lot of time thinking about big-ticket purchases. They'll spend weeks shopping for a new car. They'll spend days considering new furniture choices. What color to paint the living room is a huge deal. They're all big decisions, to be sure, but the decision to add a pet to the family is equally important and deserves an equal amount of thought. Here once again to talk about choosing the right dog for you and your family is Tyson Youts, Adoption, Rescue, and Foster Coordinator for Pinellas County Animal Services. Tyson, welcome back.
Hello, Len.
We've talked about this before on the program, but it is a big deal. You don't want people to get a dog or a kitten impulsively. You don't want somebody to buy a kitten or a dog as a pet, as a gift for somebody else. You want to take your time and really think it out when choosing a dog. So what are some of the things to look for and think about when you're selecting a dog for your family?
Well, number one, since it's a lifelong commitment, a lifelong choice, make your decision wisely. Take some time. I would say, number one, do not shop with your eyes. That's why we get so many animals into our shelters, because someone made an impulse decision, an impulse purchase, an impulse adoption that ended up not being the right choice for them because they didn't think about it.
Well, what are some of the things to think about now? What are some of the things to consider?
Things that you need to think about are your activity level. Are there children in the house? Do you have a yard? There is a huge, long list to go down. And activity level, children, those are your two good questions to start with.
Yeah. Is there like a formula for dog size? Do you know how much space a dog needs? Is there a way if some dog is so many pounds and it needs a big yard, or is there a way of figuring that out?
Not by size, but by breed. Now, of course, you don't want to stereotype. Well, dog breeds have stereotypical behaviors that are common with certain breeds. Many people assume a small dog is a lap dog, and they're not. That's why we have so many Jack Russell Terriers come into our shelter. They are active. They want to run. They want to play. They want to be chasing a tennis ball, just on and on and on. And it's not going to be one that's going to sit in your lap while you rub its ears and listen to our radio program.
So make a list of kind of your needs and your activities and your preferences, and I know the people at Animal Services are real good at helping you to match up with the proper breed. Is there a different protocol for selecting a puppy versus an older dog? Is there a benefit to getting a puppy versus an older dog, or vice versa?
Yes, there is. And there's benefits and detractions to both. You want to make sure you're making the right choice. Most people walk in, I want a puppy.
Sure.
And why? Oh, because it's cute.
Yeah.
And that's the mistake you're making right there, is shopping with your eyes. You want to make sure that if you're getting a puppy, that you have the time to clean up the house training accidents. You may have to have a carpet cleaner come out periodically. Do you have the time to do that training? If there's a lot of children and school's getting ready to start, the poor dog may feel neglected. In the case like that, then you might consider a cat. But there are many, many kinds of animals and dogs, many breeds, that you can fit to match your household.
An older dog versus a puppy. I know puppies require a lot of training. Holy mackerel! But does an older dog come kind of pre-trained, or do they require training as well?
Well, there's a stereotype, and this is an incorrect stereotype, and we hear this from people all the time that will say, "I don't want an older dog. I don't want to inherit its problems." That's making the assumption that the animal came into the shelter because it had problems. It could be because the owner has lost a job and can't afford to take care of an animal and made the best decision he could to try and find it a new home. Or it could be that that owner has lost his home and has moved into a place that doesn't allow animals.
Sure.
That really frustrates me.
So it may be a really good dog that's just at the shelter through no fault of its own.
That's correct. The best dogs that I've ever owned, and I've owned many, many of them, have been ones that had that stereotype of, oh, I'm inheriting somebody else's problems.
So when you say sit, will the dog sit? Or once again, do they require additional training from you?
My volunteers do work with and do help train any negative behaviors out of the animals. So even if an animal comes into the shelter because of behavior issues, my volunteers are great. They're help working to train them out of that. But it's fairly easy to teach a dog to sit. It just takes some really good food. I mean, I'll sit for good food, too.
Even an old dog can learn new tricks.
Yes, I can.
When a new dog comes home, be it a younger dog or an older dog, what's the best way to introduce it to its new environment and introduce it to the other family members or any other family pets in the household?
And this is where you'll have a lot of questions that you'll have to ask yourself and ask the staff at the shelter. They'll be able to help you with that. Questions like, because you'll need to work with, do you have children? Is it tile floor, carpeted floor? Some dogs are afraid of tile floors, which is really odd. But it does happen. So you'll bring a new animal home, and if you don't have another animal, then that's not an issue. But if you do have another animal, you need to take your existing animal, put it in another room, close the door, and let your new animal explore the house. Then you take the new animal, set it aside, and let your existing animal out of that room that you've closed it in so it can get used to the smell and say, oh, something else lives here.
Yeah.
Rather than something has invaded, get out.
Now, a lot of people will adopt a new animal because they feel their existing animal needs a friend.
It does help your existing animal to live longer.
Oh,
and
really?
It's really nice because if you work 8 hours in a day or 10 hours or more,
sure,
then you get home and your dog's been napping all day long. And you get home and your dog's got the leash in his hand and ready to go, or his paw, and says, let's go play, let's go to the dog park. You may not feel like that if you've been working all day. So if you have another dog, they've been playing with each other. You get home from a long day at work, then you can all sit on the couch together and just rub each other's ears.
Time to watch TV.
Yes.
We'll turn on the doggy channel. How quickly should you establish a relationship with a veterinarian? And any kind of a dog, you don't have to wait until it gets sick to take it to the vet because it has problems with fleas and ticks and heartworms and a lot of medical issues that need to be checked on a regular basis. So should you do that right away? Is that one of the protocols?
Well, the old phrase of an ounce of prevention,
sure,
a pound of cure. If you have a veterinarian that you already use, and I say, talk to your friends, get some recommendations, go ahead and even if you don't have an animal, go ahead and find a vet before you even have an animal. That sounds strange, but that way you can set up your first visit and appointment, even if you say, but my dog's not sick. Someday it will. We all get sick occasionally. You want your vet to see the dog that you bring home when it's healthy.
Absolutely.
And the way it should be, so that when you bring the dog and it has gotten ill, for whatever reason,
the
or
vet can tell the
eaten something
difference.
it shouldn't have, then the vet will know what to do.
You know, I was doing some research before you came along here today, and it says that pet ownership is at a record high nationwide, and I'm wondering if that's true here in the Pinellas County area. It says here that 47% of families have dogs, 35% have cats, and of those households that have a pet, 40% have multiple pets. Is that true locally?
That would be true, and I think it might even be undercounted.
Okay, all right.
Because a lot of those counts are taken by the number of licensed animals. And even though it's code and you're supposed to have your animals rabies shots and licenses, there's a lot of people that don't, and they're not counted on that list.
How much money should we expect to spend on our pets?
Well, you just got to have
That's-
some blank checks and let the dog write them.
That's kind of a loaded question. That same research said that a pet costs people maybe $500 a year is the estimate. And I'm wondering, what are some of the and we all know dog food and dog grooming, and maybe a trip to the vet, and you kind of will estimate that in with your budget. But what are about some of the unexpected expenses that you might have to encounter as an animal professional? How can you answer that?
Well, some of the unexpected expenses might be if you don't buy any toys for your dog and it decides to chew on something you care about.
Yeah.
So then you have some expenses
Some
that aren't
damage
exactly
control.
dog related.
A new couch, a new sofa.
Yes, new couch, new sofa, or other shoes. I think it's kind of funny that one of the most popular dog toys is a rubber shoe. We don't want to teach a dog to chew on shoes.
And it's my same size, too. I don't know how they made that happen.
But did they squeak?
my shoes do, yeah.
Okay. But there are a lot of different expenses, things, preventative maintenance with your veterinarian, treats. You always want to have treats on hand to train and work with your animal. Toys are great. Dog beds. Now you'll have dog beds and any stuffed animals that your dog likes, and you have to clean those things. So you're using dish soap and whatever other things that you use. One of those Swiffer things for your tile floor to pick up the dog hair that sheds on the floor or falls off of your shirt, when you've been petting him for so long, and that's just part of the territory.
Well, it's a lot of expense, a lot of work, a lot of patience, but boy, it does pay off, though. If you get a good dog, it'll be your best pal, for years.
It will be your best friend for years, and even after that, when the time has come and gone, you'll never forget that wonderful experience.
Oh, man, you're bringing a tear to my eye here, Tyson. Stop it. Well, and of course, if someone were interested in adopting a pet, the best place to start that search is Pinellas County Animal Services.
Start with the shelter, but also you can go to the shelter's website. You can see pictures and videos of the animals that are up for adoption. If you see an animal you might be interested in, then copy that breed and then do some searches online for what types of animals, what does that animal most like. If you a family that has a lot of energy and go for lots of runs and walks, we get a lot of American Pit Bull Terriers turned into the shelter, not because of stereotypical aggression. Mm-hmm. You get them as puppies, they're really active, and they come to the shelter at 8 months old because they weren't trained.
All right, it's the best place to begin your search.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank my guest this time around, Tyson Youts, Adoptions, Rescue, and Foster Coordinator with Pinellas County Animal Services. We remind you that Pinellas County Animal Services is always looking for volunteers. If anyone in our broadcast audience is interested in volunteering their time at Pinellas County Animal Services, complete information is on the Animal Services website at pinellascounty.org/animal services, one word. Just scroll down and hit volunteer or send us an email at animals@pinellascounty.org. Well, coming up after the break, we go to the mailbag to answer some questions about dangerous dogs when we come back. And we're back. Welcome back to For the Love of Animals, a presentation of Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 AM. I'm your host, Len Szynski, and joining me right now is John Hohenstern, Senior Animal Control Officer at Pinellas County Animal Services. John, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Len. How you doing?
Welcome back, a regular guest and a welcome addition to our program as we go into the mailbag.
All right.
And this morning, John, we've got some pretty serious emails here. Let me go through a couple of these with you. Troy from St. Petersburg says, to whomever this concerns, my family and I are in desperate need of a dangerous dog removal. It's running the neighborhood, it says here. The dog is all black and big. So not much of a description, but he's a very dangerous dog. Danita from Tarpon Springs says she's reporting a dog attack on my dog and myself. Luckily, nobody was injured, very shaken up. My dog was on a leash, she says, when this brown, short-haired dog came running at her and then on her. The owner had two dogs at large. Somebody from St. Petersburg says these residents, some neighbors here, have a dog that recently got used and attacked another dog in the neighborhood, seriously injuring it. The dog sounds vicious through the fence, and I'm very afraid of it getting loose again and injuring another animal or a person. From Clearwater, here's an email. I want to remain anonymous, but on a certain date, a certain Friday, a couple of weeks ago, I witnessed a loose, vicious dog attack a lady on a bicycle. That dog also charged me and showed me its teeth. I was all the way across the street just walking down the sidewalk. This is ridiculous, this letter writer goes on to say. I'm a smart pet owner who takes my animals to the vet. They get plenty of food and exercise, and now I'm afraid that if I walk outside my front door, I am going to be attacked. So, John, my question to you is, I know this is a big problem, judging by the volume of email we receive. Just what is a dangerous dog?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a legal definition of exactly what a dangerous dog is.
It's kind of, you know it when you see it, but I know you have some certain parameters that are actually in the ordinance.
Right, or whatever. A dangerous dog is anyone that has aggressively bitten, attacked, endangered, or inflicted severe injury on a human being on public or private property, or if the dog has more than once inflicted severe injury or killed another domestic animal while off the owner's property.
Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit more because that's a very important phrase. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm walking in the public domain with my dog, if I get bit by a dog, if my dog gets bit by another dog, chances are that dog can be classified as dangerous.
Well, it depends on the circumstances and the severity.
All right. Okay.
With everything else, there's a definition for even what a severe injury is. Severe injury means any physical injury that results in broken bones, multiple bites, disfiguring lacerations requiring sutures or reconstructive surgery, regardless of the permanency of any disfigurement. So if it's just a simple nip on the hand by your neighbor's dog that dotted out, probably not going to get declared dangerous.
If the dog draws blood, is that a
that's
threshold?
That's a bite, but I mean that's it's what the circumstances are. Like I said, circumstances and severity, and even if a dog, while loose, unattended, and off the owner's property, attacks and kills another domestic animal. If that's the first report we have of it, it still can't be declared dangerous because we have to prove that the dog has more than once done that.
All right, let's go through the procedure then. I'm walking my dog and we get attacked. The dog gets attacked. The dog gets bit. Let's say I get bit as well. Let's say the attacking dog actually draws blood. First off the bat, I don't know this dog. I've never seen it before in my life. The dog could have rabies for all I know. What should I do at that point in time?
Well, you need to get in touch with us. 582-2600.
Should I call the police first or what?
If you really think that you're in, immediate danger, yes, because they're the ones that can respond with their lights blaring and speed. We can't do that. You need call them if you really think you're in danger.
But I should call you.
Yeah, call us. We'll take the report. Because there's a bite to a human being now, the biting dog needs to be quarantined for a period of 10 days just to rule out that rabies risk to you.
So you'll come out to the neighborhood and capture the dog?
Well, if it's running loose at the time, yes.
Okay.
Or if it's back in its owner's yard or in the owner's home by the time we're out there, we'll contact the owner and let them know what their responsibilities are because of what happened.
Okay.
And then, we gather evidence. We'll give you a statement form where you tell us exactly what happened. You give us pictures, whatever medical attention you needed, whatever medical attention your dog needed, pictures of your dog, your dog's injuries, your injuries. And then we get in touch with the dog owner and ask for their side of the story.
Now, who makes the determination? You mentioned it was a degree of severity, whether or not the dog is dangerous. Who makes that determination?
Dr. Caroline and Mo Freeney.
Okay. Who is the director of Pinellas County Animal Services.
Makes the ultimate decision if there's sufficient findings for the dog to be declared dangerous.
So if the dog bite is so severe that my hand is going to be disfigured, if I'm going to have a scar for the rest of my life, that might qualify?
That might qualify, yes.
And then what happens if my neighbor's dog is indeed declared dangerous? What happens?
The dog gets to live. It used to be a death sentence. We had a lot stricter ordinance a number of years ago. But the dog gets to remain alive.
So the dog gets a second chance.
He gets a second chance, but with some severe restrictions. There's no running loose. There's no being outside without a muzzle and on a 6-foot leash with somebody competent enough to restrain the dog. Wherever the dog is living, the house needs to be posted with dangerous dog signs, at every entryway. So it's
And how long is the dog on probation that way?
For its entire life.
And if they do it again,
then depending on the circumstances and the severity,
if history repeats itself,
that could be it for the dog.
So, and we know what that means. And it seems like a lot of the responsibility does indeed fall on the dog owner.
Exactly. I mean, everything is. If dog owners don't allow their dogs to run loose, I mean, that's half of it right there. Dogs become very territorial if they're allowed to run the neighborhood. And then when they see somebody else coming into what they consider their territory, they try to protect it. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy thing that, the more you let your dog run loose, the more territory he takes of the neighborhood, and the more he's going to try to defend it when some strange dog comes walking into his territory.
Are certain breeds more aggressive, more territorial than others? Pit bulls get such a bad rap.
No, not really. I mean, I've been here for 16 years now. We've had Chihuahuas declared dangerous, and we've had Great Danes declared dangerous. Mm-hmm. It's the deed, not the breed. That's what we like to say.
So I was going to ask you the question about, is it the breed or the training or lack of training? And you're going to tell me that it's, once again, falls on the shoulders of the dog owner.
Of the owner, right. If any dog isn't trained, I mean, we like to say, if it has teeth, it can bite.
Yeah, sure. Will good training undo the bad training? In other words, if I'm in this situation where my dog has been declared dangerous, can I retrain it to be a good dog?
Within certain parameters, well, yes. If it's an older dog that's, hasn't been neutered and the behavior is so well established that, that's the way it's going to react, to a situation, probably not. If it's a younger dog, yeah, I would say, but it takes the entire family to reinforce the behavior that they want, and that's usually where it falls down.
And I know training is a very complicated procedure to go through, and everybody has to cooperate. Everybody has to be uniform in their training.
Exactly.
Procedures.
Everyone in the family needs to treat the dog exactly the same way. Does
spaying and neutering help to make a dog less aggressive?
It's more beneficial the younger the animal is, because usually even after they're spayed or neutered, if the behavior is established, they'll still do the behavior even though there's really no reason to do it.
Okay. Do some pet owners seem surprised when you go to them and you tell them that their dog has been acting aggressively? I mean, because I see a lot of situations where, the dog seems to be okay with the owners, people they see every day, but then all of a sudden it'll snap when a stranger comes into its environment. They haven't been socialized properly. They don't know how to react with strangers. And all of a sudden these dogs are like, my dog, he's so sweet. How could you possibly mean my dog?
Yeah, well,
you get that a lot?
Yes, because, in its own pack, if you will, the family unit, yeah, the dog will be fine. But, there's that territorial thing. Okay, this is my territory and I have to defend it. And now there's this strange dog or strange person that, who knows what sets a dog off that doesn't smell right, look right, whatever to me. And yeah, they could react.
What should I do? Law enforcement, they will not put up with aggressive animals. And we've all seen and heard stories of how they deal with aggressive dogs. But as a citizen, as a member of that neighborhood, and I'm walking along and I see a dog approach me that looks like it might want to take a bite out of me, what should I do? Can I arm myself? Is pepper spray effective, or what should I do?
Well, there are some citronella sprays that are very effective and that are marketed for dogs. I've seen a really nasty Rottweiler get pepper sprayed by the sheriff's office, and all it did was make him even madder.
Oh no!
Yeah. So if you do have to defend yourself, whatever you have to hand, you have to do what you have to do to defend yourself against an at-large dog. But hopefully, just kind of raising your voice and saying "Go home"
will work. Yeah.
And then if it doesn't, then you need to distance yourself or put something between you and the dog.
Because a lot of people will say, just stop what you're doing, don't make eye contact, ignore the dog, and it'll kind of get bored with you or realize that you're not a threat anymore. Let's not wait for that. Let's not wait to see if that works.
I don't know if I'd do that. I'd keep my eye on the dog for sure.
All right, but once again, it's the pet owner's responsibility, and if they fail to live up to their responsibility, you're going to have a problem on your hands.
The dog's going to pay the ultimate price for having a irresponsible owner.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, John, for that mailbag response. That brings us to the end of our program. I want to thank my guest this time around, John Hohenstern, Senior Animal Control Officer with Pinellas County Animal Services. You have been listening to to For the Love of Animals, presented by Pinellas County Animal Services and Inspiration 1110 a.m. Be sure to be with us next Saturday at 11 a.m. for another episode. And if you have any questions or comments on anything we've talked about on this program, just send us an email at animals@pinellascounty.org or give us a call at area code 727-582-2600. For more information on Pinellas County Animal Services, check out the website pinellascounty.org/animal services. Thanks for listening. I'm Len Szynski with the Pinellas County Communications Department. Join us next time for The Love of Animals.